Hello, welcome to this very special edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the famed Jazz Standard here in New York City. 2017 is a very important and pivotal year commemorating the centennial of some very important, iconic jazz artists who paved the way for not only their compositions, but their contributions to the world of music. And those icons include the great Ella Fitzgerald, Mungo Santamaria, Thelonious Monk, and the great Dizzy Gillespie. Tonight here at the Jazz Standard, pianist Danilo Perez is revisiting a project which he recorded almost 20 years ago, which was a tribute to the great Thelonious Monk, one of his heroes. Tonight we sit down and we break bread and we talk about the legacy of this recording. We talk about the great Thelonious Monk and what he means to jazz, and as well as what his compositions have done to the world of jazz. And we also reflect on one of his heroes who he played with, the great Dizzy Gillespie. As you know, when he was cutting his teeth early off in the New York jazz scene, he played with the great Dizzy Gillespie and his United Nations big band. Also, we sit down and we talk about his trio, which features the great Ben Street as well as Terry Lynn Carrington, as well as both he and Terry's role at Berkeley University in grooming the next generation of jazz musicians. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the highlights of the great Danilo Perez and his trio, featuring Ben Street on bass and the legendary Terry Lynn Carrington on drums, performing a tribute to the great Thelonious Monk, live here at the Jazz Standard as part of the Pace Report here in New York City. know, we sit here. This is almost 10 years of the Pace Report, and you were one of my first guys that I profiled here at the Jazz Standard. And we've done many, many interviews over the years, and I thank you for allowing me to sit down with you this evening.
I remember, Brian. It's always been joyful to be with you and encouraging and inspiring.
You know, Danilo, I always tell people ask me, well, what records do you recommend to get started with Danilo Perez? And I said, well, my foray into you were two very important records that you did early in your career. The first one was Central Avenue, and then this, Panamonk, which, and I explain why, because you put a very Latin perspective to Thelonious Monk's music. And tonight, you're playing a lot of that music 20 years, like you told me earlier. And then also, this is the centennial of Thelonious Monk.
Absolutely. Brian, I will add to that list that you just mentioned. I would say that The Journey is a very crucial record. Because it started this almost ethnomusicology connection for me. In other words, I started really connecting themes like the slave routing. You know, I was very much into that at that time. So I studied a lot and I wrote music for that. So I would before Panamonk, I would say that The Journey is an important record for me. Now, Panamonk is a crucial one for me because what it did is it brought Panama to Monk helped me to connect to my roots in Panama. How that happened was I was on tour with Wynton Marsalis, and then we were playing Thelonious Monk music, but they put a spin on it that has a New Orleans feel too. And I remember when I heard those songs, like, we played Evidence, and we played certain pieces of Monk with that little tinge, the water, the Caribbean, the gumbo feel too, a little bit of that. It really connected me. The swing feel connected me to my roots in Panama. And I started hearing Monk in clave, if you want to call it. But not the Cuban clave only, the Panamanian folkloric music too. There is a rhythm that goes to cat to cat to cat cat cat. There's very much of the New Orleans too. So there's a feel that I started hearing Monk. I started actually understanding the concept of sound, and I remember it. That's what happened.
Tell me the first time that you were really. Tell me the Thelonious Monk record and also the composition that opened up Pandora's box for Danilo Perez.
Well, I would say that the record that, believe it or not, really got to the core is the one Thelonious Monk Alone in San Francisco.
Ooh.
Yeah, there's something in there that I understood. Hearing him alone really uncovered a lot of things for me. And as I said before, when I went back to listen to his music, I was listening to his music from a different perspective. Of course, the things he did with his great Charlie Rouse, with that group, the record with Art Blakey, the early ones, the record with Train, that there's a lot of Monk that I just brilliant corners. I mean, there's a lot of, and also I remember hearing Sphere, the band Sphere, live with Gary Bartz and Kenny Barron. So, being around New York, there was a cat, Rodney Kendricks. He really encouraged me, and I learned a lot of things from him. Donald Brown, my teacher too. I was surrounded by people who actually knew his music. Thelonious Monk came to me the first time I said was Jon Hendricks. I was working with Jon Hendricks, but I didn't get it. When I play with him that music, I did not get it. I didn't understand the sounds. I thought that he was actually missing some notes. I didn't understand it was I wasn't ready for that. That was a whole different. He's a whole different sound sphere itself, and my classical background got on the way for me to hear those sounds that he was. So I heard it as a different thing. I heard it as a glitches, or uh, and the more I got into him, I started hearing that concept, and then I realized, wow, this is. I need to invest energy into this and dedicate my life to it, you know. And then there was another period that I got to play a lot with Steve Lacey, and Steve Lacey was the master of Thelonious Monk. He knew Thelonious Monk inside voicing so well, and he taught me a lot.
Thelonious is one of my heroes. The thing that I love about him is that his imperfections in his music and his chord structure is what made everything so beautiful about what he played and what he tried to articulate musically.
Yeah, you know, For me, the word that comes out when I hear him now completely is he knew how to drew drew you into the mystery of the music, you know. And 20 years later, revisiting him, I actually there is a live recording of him playing just a gigolo. You can YouTube it. You can get it on YouTube, and you can see him sweating throughout. But man, what he puts in that, you know, or the way he played Crespel of Nelly, or the way he plays around midnight at a certain point. I mean, you know, there's so much emotion in his music, and to me, he is. If you want to learn about Afro-American classical music, he is one of the ones you have to go through. Duke Ellington's another one.
I was going to bring that up because both of those guys really, I mean, and Ellington was very interesting because he wrote symphonic, he wrote for the quartet, he wrote for, I mean, he wrote classical. I mean, he did a whole bunch of stuff musically within the era of the 20th century of music. And Monk kind of came in the late 40s and he kind of shook things up again musically and how the trio and the quartet is supposed to sound.
He was ahead of the game. He was able to. He was hearing things that were still nowadays advanced. I mean, they're like his music will be here for generations to come, and we'll still find things that we can learn from, and also open minds. I mean, his stuff is so it's so deep. He was able to connect the concept of sound with the tap dancing feel too, the dance element of the music, and also connected with African music to me. That whole skeleton, his sound is ancient, and it reveals a sound that can only be born in this country, and we are he kind of opens that door for the impossible. You know what I mean? The possibilities. This is the man.
His personal life was interesting too, and especially the last decade of his life, he just stopped playing. And as a musician, what is your take on that? Because do you think that he just ran out of things to say musically, or do you think that he just was tired?
I had an opportunity to meet Nelly before she passed away, and I played her Panamonk, the record. I went to their home, and I played the piano, Thelonious Monk piano, and he had a mirror too on top, and it was very special. And I don't think musically that his issues were not, for me, were not with inspiration from the music. It was that he was dealing with the personal issues, about his health, and also I think I don't even know what it feels like to be in his shoes, to be way ahead of the game, and throwing down sounds that sometimes were rejected by people. People didn't really understand, and people gave sometimes bad criticism. They didn't understand it. So I don't even know what it feels. I just know that musically there was no way that I could see Monk getting like not producing music. That was for me, for the way that he wrote and the way he played. For me, I could tell that music was therapy for him. It was the special part of his life that he needed. But I'm not sure if he was. We were talking yesterday about the card to the license for liquor and all of that. Remember the troubles about the.
Yeah.
That's why he stopped the. Stuff that is not worth mentioning again now. But I think the whole thing about playing jazz kind of got to him maybe sometimes. The the situations that the under appreciation. I think the feeling that a lot of great jazz musicians have about being more appreciated in Europe and not in United States where they come from. Maybe that was a fact for him. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I could see it. I mean, if somebody like that, you know, would be like, to me, the equivalent of Beethoven. That's the kind of level of love, respect, and recognition that should have. So I'm not sure what happened towards the end, but I know it was related to his health.
Ben, tell me the very first time that you musically crossed paths with Danilo Perez.
Oh, I think it was 1987 at Berklee School of Music. I was going to New England Conservatory and he was going to Berklee, and somebody had organized a session, and we met then, and then played a fair amount with different people around then, and then I lost touch with him for a while and caught up again in New York around 93 or 94 or something.
Tell me about what makes Danilo a great band leader, and what are some of the things that you guys trade off as musicians when you're playing on that band stage and also in the recording studio?
I think one thing that's special with Danilo is this feeling that whatever you talk about during the day or off the bandstand can be brought onto the bandstand and referenced, and it's sort of like an ongoing process of trying to figure out what we're feeling slash hearing, trying to kind of get to it, you know, and not be stuck in assumptions of what someone wants or what you're supposed to be doing, rather than it seems like he wants you to get to your feelings and your whatever that mysterious thing is about art that you would work on at home and activate it.
You know, these last couple of nights here at the Jazz Standard, this is the first time in 20 years that Danilo revisited Panamonk.
Wow.
And first time you played this music and playing it now, especially with Terry Lynn Carrington, what is it like coming back to this?
That's a very interesting question, because for years people have wanted him to do this. It's been a very popular request from audiences, and I think it's great that he finally did it. You know, and it's beautiful. He's got. I'm glad that he didn't completely change it all or completely deconstruct it or rearrange it. There's still a lot of that very fun, catchy thing that the record has and continues to have.
You know, Ben, as a musician in the idiom of jazz, what does Thelonious Monk mean to you? And also, what does he mean to you? But also playing and transcribing what Danilo's vision of Monk's music in a revisited format.
It's interesting. Once Danilo and I were in his car listening to Michael Jackson CDs back to back, and just, I mean, besides all the great things about it, we were just floored by how everything was in clave. Every tune was in clave, and obviously similar with Monk's music. And when you have something like that to deal with, it just makes it so much easier to start working with it, as long as you honor that flow to the best of your ability. Now, in terms of dealing with Monk as I love that expression, the high priest. It's just, I mean, that says it all for me, because I know I'm not the high priest, and I feel it every time I'm trying to play his music. I'd much rather be at home listening to it, but it's just so heavy and so powerful and so perfect. But it's an amazing challenge to be trying to play it as well, which I'll be doing the rest of my life. You know, it's a continuation of studying it at home. It's hard to put into words with someone like Monk, there are very few.
You know, one of the first guys that you played for, and 2017 has been an incredible year commemorating some of the very important icons of the idiom of jazz. We're dealing with Mungo Santa Maria, Ella Fitzgerald, Monk, and another guy that you got your chops started off is with Dizzy Gillespie. And Dizzy's very important too, because he was not only a great entertainer, but he was an educator. He was an ambassador of this music. He traveled around the world making sure that big band, the quartet, all of his music was heard, and he wanted people to understand this idiom called jazz. You being from Panama, and him also having a warm connect with world music, what were some of the things that you learned from him when you got on the band stage with him?
Absolutely, musically. You know, I remember being on the piano and asking him, how did he come up with those voicings? He said, lift off your finger. You put this finger up, put this finger, listen to the sound. He taught me to listen. He taught me to pay attention and to be in tune with my environment, and to remember that it was a give and take. You have to interact. Jazz about interaction. But one of the greatest lessons I learned, beside that musical ones there were many, it was the desire the ultimate desire he had to use music as a tool for intercultural dialogue. the idea of using music as a cultural passport to bridge the gaps between people through music, to connect different nations. That's what I learned from him. I saw his desire when I was in the band. There was a Puerto Rican, a Cuban, um, Brazilian, and then at one point there were people from Africa. I mean, it was a, a whole crew
United
of
Nations.
people.
It was.
It was a United Nation, and I gotta tell you, I was very grateful because before that I was working with Paquito da Rivera and Claudio Roditi, and Paquito recommended me to be a part of the DC Gillespie United Nations. So this is like a family, that, I also work with Sly Hampton in school with Claudio Roditi. So they embraced me like their younger brother, and being around DC, who was directing the vibe, the energy, it was amazing to learn about that. This is one of the greatest lessons I learned, that I want to be a cultural ambassador of music. I want to continue that mission he had, to use music as a tool, as a diplomatic tool.
His compositions and him as a band leader, what were some of the things that you took away from playing with him and carrying it now as a leader some 20, almost 30 years later?
The same family like with Monk. Little details, minuscules, little thing, a turnaround, a little shift of note, a 2/5 that move in a little way. One note goes this way, the other one goes that way. Little ingredients. The art of being in the moment and playing with the attitude of invitation for people. When he played, he invited you in. That's an incredible genius. And he could be here right now, and we could be joking right now, but when he took the trumpet and put it on, it was serious business every time, no matter how good he felt or didn't feel. I couldn't believe it. No matter how tired he was, how long we've been traveling, how funny he was, he picked up the instrument and he turned into a superhero. These are people that came to our life to change humanity.
Danilo, one of the things that I really admire about you, going into what you were just talking about, you are at Berkeley, and you and Terry Lynn and some other musicians are really making sure you're really instating the next generation of musicians, one, to understand the lineage and the connection by way of their culture, but also the history of this music. And what is it that you're doing at Berkeley, and what is fueling you to make sure that this happens?
Well, one of the important elements of education is that it's changing right now. In the world, Terry Lynn and I, and many of us, other peers of mine, we went to what I call the University of the Street. We learned from the masters like Dizzy Gillespie, Steve Lacey, Roy Haynes, Jack DeJohnette, Wayne Shorter, and we have to play an active role in passing along information. It's very important. There is a component also at the Berkeley Global Jazz Institute that is powerful. I'm really inspiring people with Terry Lynn, Joe Lovano, John Patitucci. It's a group of us that we really trying our best to inspire the students to recognize that when they have a gift, they have a responsibility with humanity, and the responsibility is to use music to connect people and to redirect us in a positive direction. Music has that power to bring us together. So in a way, it's crucial times. I think we have the right setting. It's kind of sad to say, but I also, from an optimistic point of view, we have the right setting for music to do what it's supposed to do, which is to heal the heart of people and to heal all the difference we may have. So the Global Jazz Institute inspiring the students through a curriculum that brings them to outreach programs, to jail system, to, they see DC Club, the Jazz Standard, the Blue Note, a festival, but they also see the needs to bring music in this setting that usually they don't get to hear this kind of music. They go to the Panama Jazz Festival, which is a festival that we do every year, this year January 15th to the 20th, and the festival is a social activist festival, a focus in using music to provide opportunities for underprivileged kids to get out of poverty through music. We call that human development through music. So it's our time now. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of issues this year. I just saw an article yesterday in the New York Times about women in jazz and the year. And I feel that we are part of the history. It's time for the artists, musicians to really take it to the politicians and bring the conversation to the level we know how to do it. So that's why I'm excited about the Berkeley Global Jazz Institute. It's our time. We got to come out and do what we need to do.
Terry, tell me the first time that you musically crossed paths with Danilo.
Ooh, I don't know if I remember the first time. But back, I guess it was the 90s, late 90s, we did Panamonk together. Um, we toured before that, rehearsing the music, and we went to Panama, we played Sweet Basil, did a bunch of gigs. Um, and then we didn't really play together for a while because I moved to LA. And his manager at the time, David Burrell, put some shows together with Danilo and myself and John Patitucci and Mike Stern. And that was the next time we got to play together. And then after that, not for a while, until I got back to Boston.
This is crazy. This whole week, this is the first time you guys played this music in over 20 years. What's it feel like coming back to, because this was a very successful record when it came out, but coming back to this and also being the centennial of Thelonious Monk this year?
Yeah, it's beautiful coming back to it because we play different now. I know that I played a lot better now than I did back then. And he's grown so much, through all the years of playing with Wayne, and just, we get more wisdom, so he's grown, I've grown, and the approach is different. We're more mature. I think we have more synergy now than we did then.
You and Danilo are really passionate about this next generation of musicians. Tell everybody about this program at Berklee and what you guys are really trying to accomplish.
Well, mentoring is huge, in jazz. I had great mentors. Danilo did as well. So this program, one of the things I love about it is we have a very close relationship with the students. It's an institute. So with an institute, you can kind of make your own rules. We have undergrads and we have a master's program. And it's not just about music. I mean, we're focused on music, of course, but, there's other areas of life and how you connect music with humanity, like how you think about it, in a larger picture, how it fits into society, how you create value with your art, how you contribute to humanity. It's not like what you're getting from humanity, it's what you're contributing to humanity is the focus. So I think it's a great program for people that are not just looking for, these people that they've admired, just to take lessons from, to learn more repertoire and all that, but to really learn, some life lessons. And I think that's, a strong part of our program.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live from the Jazz Standard here in New York City. Make sure you go out and support Danilo Perez's projects, which you can buy on his website, as well as iTunes and Amazon.com. I'd like to thank Danilo for his time, as well as Mr. Ben Street, as well as the incomparable Terry Lynn Carrington. Also, I'd like to personally thank the staff and management here at the Jazz Standard for their warm hospitality. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column, as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.